Hey everybody, it's Elias Mastrogiannis here, and this is the Distillery Nation Podcast, where insightful business advice collide with craft distillery interviews. Look no further, as you found the podcast you need to listen for craft distilling. Hey Distillery Nation, welcome to our first episode for 2016. This one is a special one. I was really excited to talk to Nathan from 2 Bar Spirits. We did the interview live at the distillery, so it's a little bit, sound quality was not there, but I had a blast. I got a lot of advice from him. Highly recommend their bourbon. It was killer. It was really good stuff. We talk about the 2 Bar history and how he started. We talk a little bit about branding and what are the core values that you gotta have in order to be successful in this business. So let's get into the interview, and I hope you enjoy it. Hello and welcome to episode 08 of the Distillery Nation Podcast. We are very honored to introduce today's guest, Nathan Kaiser. Nathan is the owner and distiller behind 2 Bar Spirits here in Seattle, Washington, and the mind behind 2 Bar Bourbon, Vodka, and Moonshine. Nathan, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm really excited to be here today.
Well, thank you. We're actually doing the interview live from the 2 Bar Spirits here in Seattle, a beautiful location. So thank you for having us. So can you tell us a little bit about your personal life and any details that we missed with the introduction?
Sure. So I'm originally from South Texas in Austin. I moved around quite a bit and ended up in Seattle, having met a beautiful woman by the name of Nathan Kaiser, who became my wife. And but I'm kind of an entrepreneurial guy. I right out of the UW with a microbiology degree, started working in different businesses, medical and then high tech, and then jumped from any number of high tech companies. I've actually lost count here in Austin and in New York, and ended up back in Seattle in about 2003. Really focused on high tech, but it was only in 2010 that I really realized what I wanted to do with my life, and that is make whiskey. So the name 2 Bar comes from my family's ranch in South Texas. That's still in the family. My grandfather was born on it and still works it. 5 generations with a history of moonshining. And we go back every year. We spend a lot of time there. We're taking the whole family down, my wife and I and the 3 boys, in November. And with Washington State being kind of the epicenter for craft, and by that I mean it started with coffee, it then went to beer, or wine, and then to beer, and now spirits. And this is an opportunity for me to really start making something with my hands again, and to start making moonshine and whiskey, which are both passions of mine. And so in 2010, I told my wife, we had our first son, who was 3 months old. I said, hey honey, I want to open a distillery. And she said, you should do that.
Very nice.
And no argument, no complaints, just said, yeah, you should do that. So she's been my biggest supporter. I was kind of hoping for a little more of an argument, or expecting one, and so it was 2010. I, put my life savings into it, and raised a little bit of money from some friends, and bootstrapped it from there. So we just celebrated our 3-year anniversary of being open, which was October.
Congratulations, by the way.
2012. Thank you so much.
Yeah. So you talked a little bit about 2 Bar, and I love the logo itself. It's very, very subtle, but then it pops with it too, right? So kind of modern with the history of the ranch. But can you tell us a little bit from back from the ranch in Texas to what made you actually open it here versus, for example, in Texas, and the reasons behind that?
Well, so I'm a Texan, and as they say, you can take the boy out of Texas, but you can't take the Texas out of the boy. But my family's up here. I love the Northwest, and I actually believe very firmly that we couldn't do what we do anywhere else in the country. The Northwest, and specifically Seattle and Washington State, are so open to the idea of local and the idea of craft. When we were first opening, and I'm going door to door, I'm talking to people about what we're doing and why we're doing it, but I'm not having to educate them about what local and craft means, because they already know. The stage was already set by the coffee makers, the winemakers, and the brewers before I even came out, into the market, and before distillers came out in the market. If you have to recreate the wheel from scratch, it's much harder. And I think that's true in a lot of other states. It's becoming less so. But, if you were located in Texas, you're still fighting a very uphill battle where the big brands reign supreme. For instance, in Oregon, the data as I understand it, is like 17% of all local spirits, of all spirits consumed in Oregon, are local.
Which is huge.
Which is amazing.
Yeah.
In Washington, I think we're closer to like 0.5 to 1%, but that means that there's just a much more of a huge opportunity before us to really establish this nascent industry to be a powerhouse. Similar to wine and beer.
Mm-hmm.
We weren't far behind in terms of beer, but now local beer represents, a huge 25-30%.
Yeah, and you see the bigger guys coming in and buying the craft breweries.
Yeah.
To accommodate for that loss, right?
And craft wine, local wine, if you don't have a local wine selection at your store or at your restaurant, you're really hurting because people are looking for it. Because one, it's local, but also it's quality.
Excellent. That's very nice. Can you take us a little bit back from the beginning of 2 Bar and take us to your worst distillery moment and tell us a little bit about the story behind it?
Yeah, that's a great one because there have been lots. And they usually involve mistakes where something has happened to hurt production. We've had any number of instances of spills or where things don't work when we need them to, so we lose a whole batch. A recent one, which was our first experience, which I don't believe will be our last, was we had our first empty barrel. So we went to pull it, the bourbon, and the barrel had leaked out 1 drop at a time over the course of almost 2 years. To being fully empty, which is a loss of that's a huge amount for a small company such as ourselves. And you chalk it up to experience and to loss. And we've really kind of adapted our process for barreling bourbon to how do we prep the barrels? How long do we wait? What do we check for? What are we looking for to ensure that doesn't happen? But the angel share there, they just required a bigger chunk. I guess they were thirsty.
They were very thirsty, exactly. So was the lesson there just checking the barrels more often, or do, as you said, the little meat pre-work before you actually add the bourbon?
Right, so bourbon has to be made in new, unused, charred white oak barrels. And so because of that, they can be desiccated or fairly dried out when we get them. And so how do you prep them, and the amount of time it takes to prep them you need to be prepared for. So what we do is we fill them with water to let that wood swell up again and become water or airtight. But sometimes there are tiny cracks or holes in the wood that will not be solved by that. And so we've gotten a lot better also at barrel fixing. I go around with a little hammer and little pieces of wood. It's actually kind of fun.
Yeah. And reseat the actual...
We'll try to fix the holes or fill them.
Okay.
If you go out here, you'll see where little leaks happen, and that's a very natural part of the process. I always love the photos, and I won't say who, but of other distilleries where they have walls of immaculate barrels. Right?
Perfect.
With no leaks, and they're beautiful, they're pristine, and I was like, those are empty. We when we get barrels, we fill them as quickly as possible. And you can tell that these barrels actually have product in them because they are far from pristine.
Excellent. Next question. Can you tell us a little bit about the aha moment? I know you mentioned it with the wife. When you first told your wife, honey, I'm going to go open a distillery. Right before that, what was the process that you went from jumping from IT, right, and being kind of like the CEO and running some companies to actually running a company that it's totally different and more on the traditional side, as you mentioned?
Yeah, I think it was more of a culmination of moments. I think this is kind of a grandiose statement, but we as a culture want to get back to something much more tangible and much more real. And I was enjoying tech. I enjoyed the scalability of it. I enjoyed working with the teams that I worked with and the products that I did and developed. But I realized that I wasn't happy. I needed to make something, right? And we were one of the few entirely grain to glass distilleries in Seattle and in even Washington. There's a lot more, which is just exciting for me to see. And we help everybody, but we're really excited for those. And I knew that I needed to be using my hands. I knew that I needed to be physical, lifting grain, pouring grain, transferring wort and mash and wash. That is what makes me happy. And I heard this, I can't recall where I heard it, but it's like, why are we here, right? We have a short amount of time. You should be doing what you're passionate about. And I've never worked harder. I've never been under more stress. and I couldn't imagine doing anything else. Right?
Nice.
Like this is a gift that I've been given to be able to do this, and now my job is not to screw it up. But also, we also keep it really simple. We have 3 products, and we just stay true to who we are and what we're doing, and we help whoever we can help along the way.
Very nice. That's excellent. Let's jump into the distillery round. So I'm going to ask you about 10 questions to get a little bit more insights about yourself. So first one is, what is your biggest strength as a distiller/owner?
That's a really good question. I don't know if I know. I think focus.
Focus.
I ran a company prior, 2 companies ago, where I learned the lessons of what not to do, right? And as an entrepreneur, you're going to have a lot of opportunities to say yes. And I actually think that my job is to say no. Mm-hmm. We are focused on 3 things. 1, the brand, right? The name 2 Bar and what that represents to us. Like, you heard about the ranch. I get goosebumps when I think about it and when I talk about it. It's that personal to me. And then everything that we do is to build on that legacy, which is we are entirely grain to glass. We've never bought anybody else's juice. We'll never buy anybody else's juice. And we will always make it entirely local and grain to glass, right? We will mill, mash, ferment, distill, and age our own product. And I think my job is to tell people no. Will you make a gin? No. Mm-hmm. I love gin, but no. Yeah. There are so many other great gins in the market. Voyager Gin, Big Gin, Copperworks, which I think you recently talked to, makes a wonderful gin. Yep. That's awesome. Yeah. Right? We're focused on the vodka, the moonshine, and the bourbon. And so we do, that's like the main 3 products. We do kind of one-offs, so we'll make one-off whiskeys. I know that you're interested in doing some stuff. So we made some one-off brandies that we're aging now. But really, my job is to tell people, no, we're focusing on what we're doing, and we're going to do it our way. Nothing against anybody else.
No.
But our focus is really on telling people, no, we're doing what we're doing because that's what we love to do.
Yeah, it's really important, to have that focus. What is the biggest weakness as a distiller/owner?
Focus.
That's
same focus. Because, when you're a small business and you're getting up and running and you're trying to develop a brand in the marketplace, and not knowing which of your products, if any, will be successful, that level of focus can be very detrimental. And a lot of distilleries have, started with 10, 15 products and are now up to 20. And they're our size, maybe bigger, smaller, all across the board. But that potentially gives you a lot more sales up front because you've got a lot more SKUs, you've got a lot more products, you've got a lot more market opportunity. Yeah. And I think our focus, while long-term is the right play for us, it is much more difficult in the short term. And I also think just from not having run a big distillery or a distillery, that's also a detriment. So how do we're developing our plans on the fly. We have the focus and we have the goal, but not having that experience, having run a distillery, is difficult because there's a lot of things that happen here that don't happen in tech. In tech, you've got a 6-week turnaround, right? We're launching a new code.
Exactly.
We're doing a release. We're really excited. Here, I'm laying whiskey down for 2+ years. It's like, what?
Yeah.
And that's also awesome because that's a big learning experience for me.
Excellent. What is the one thing that has you excited right now?
I get to make whiskey.
There's no
matter how stressed I am or what's happening or what's failing, what piece of equipment breaks, and how that impacts everything, I make whiskey.
That's really important to remember. Yeah, exactly.
How many people get to have so much passion for what they do every day, right? I mean, I wake up at 3 o'clock almost every morning thinking about the business and what I can do, what can I do better, what can I not do as badly, right? But I make whiskey. And it goes to a point, like a lot of distilleries, and more power to them, and I hope they so prove me wrong, they want to sell, right? I want to do this till I die, right?
It's your 40, 50-year-old plan, right? It's like,
if I'm 80 and still working here, by golly, who could ask for anything better? Mm-hmm. And we have 3 small boys. We have a 5-year-old, a 3-year-old, and a 4-month-old. And they get to come here with me. They help fill barrels. They're those small hands. They're not really quite perfect yet for bottling and labeling, but it's a very family-oriented thing, right? So this is a heritage and legacy for me, right? As you can see, or can't see online, but my hands, those are city boy hands. So I'm not going to be a rancher most likely, maybe in the future, but this is my legacy to continue on with the 2 Bar brand and that identity.
Very nice.
And I want to do it till I die.
Very nice. I resonate with that a lot. So
based on what you're looking at doing,
exactly.
man, it's very exciting.
Exactly.
It's like, you can't be in this business for the short term.
Yeah.
If you're in this business to sell in 3 to 5 years, more power to you, and I hope you're successful, but it's not how it works.
Yeah.
Right? In tech, you get major multiples, no such thing, and if you want to sell in terms of valuations. You don't get that in this business. And so you better be in the long term, otherwise it's a tough road to hoe.
And it's probably the wrong business if you're looking for the quick sale to become rich and get out. So it's probably not the right business. So
I want to provide a comfortable living for my family, for my team, and I want everybody to do well. But I got a long time, so our plan is long, steady, solid growth year over year. We're not doubling every year. We're not planning on any of that. We're not looking to be the biggest. We're not looking to be the baddest. We just want to make the best whiskey that we possibly can.
Very nice. What is your favorite drink right now?
So that's a fun one. Whiskey, man.
Whiskey, all the way.
Whiskey.
All the way.
So I tend to drink everything neat. I do love a really wonderful cocktail, Manhattan's Old Fashions.
The bourbon, I'm assuming, right? Yeah.
Well, across the board with, like Negronis with gin. I do love a really good cocktail, but if it's me with, either at home after the boys are asleep or with friends, it's going to be a whiskey, right? Maybe on ice, maybe with a little water, maybe neat. It all depends.
It depends on the mood.
But I'm a whiskey guy, right? Like, you saw our barrels, right? I want to make as much whiskey as
there's
possible.
walls and walls of stacked barrels, so I love it.
It's a beautiful thing.
I love it. What type of still, brand, and capacity you guys using here at 2 Bar?
Yeah, so we're using a Carl still that is about a 40 to 50 gallon. We fill it to 40 gallons, and it's a hybrid pot column still. So, but that being said, we only started distilling with that in last September. Prior to that, we got up and running with a 50-gallon stainless steel oil drum with 2 3-inch copper pipes coming off the top, made by Amphora Society. So we were the lean startup approach to distilling. So we started with a mash tun that was a former bulk milk tank. That was a 4x8 foot trough, milk trough that we converted into a mash tun. 9 IBCs, those plastic 4-foot
with the cage outside,
right? That you see a lot of wineries. We had 9 of those as our fermenters, and we had a big tank as our wash still in the Spirits Still, and we were running and cranking 5 days a week, 22 hours a day, just to keep up with production. And we proved the model, right? We've been successful, and so we were able to secure some more capital to build out what you see now, which we're only running at about 20% of capacity. So back to the long, slow, steady growth. My plan is to do it 20%, and then next year you go to 25%, and then the year after that you go to 32%. So you want to grow, but you want to grow in a measured way. Back to wanting to do this forever.
Yeah, because it allows you to control the quality of the spirits as well, right?
Versus, it allows you to build a sustainable business for the long term. If we were doubling every year, we would outgrow this equipment in every 2 to 3, maybe 4 years. And you haven't completed you need to build a sustainable business. So how do you grow into this equipment over the long term so that when you do hit the next step, your business is free and clear of any bank debt so that you can grow into the next system? And I think that's what happens with a lot of these breweries that are selling. They grew so fast, right, that the capital expense to keep scaling far surpasses their ability to service that capital. And you have to sell because, one of the things that they said in recent interviews was there have been any number of times when it was make or break for the business, and I'm guessing that was due to the need for more capital. And you sell out to a big company which can facilitate that. Not our goal, not our plan.
Yeah. Very nice perspective on that too. What was holding you back from becoming a distiller?
That's a wonderful question. My own fear. It's a really hard business. It's not easy. It's like, do you have the right products with the right quality, with the right system and production and process? But also, I don't think, if we had opened 5 years earlier, I don't think the market would have been there. I think it would have been too soon. So I think we launched at really the right time. there's some other great distilleries that opened before us. I think Woodinville, Westland, Dry Fly, even in Seattle, Ula and Sound Spirits opened before us, and they were that first wave, and we were kind of the front end of that second wave of distilleries. And fortunately, we were not up and running when the transition from a state-controlled distribution system to a open system or market system. And that really was very hurtful. That hurt a lot of companies because of the uncertainties around that transition. So we came in right as it was an open market, so we were working with distributors at 3-tier. We could sell directly or work with the distributor. And that really, I think, helped us a lot.
But the initial, step taken, because you talked a little bit, right? That it was a bootstrap operation of taking all your money savings and pouring into this business as well.
Right.
I'm assuming that's a little bit.
Yeah,
it takes a little bit of guts and
getting up the courage to ask my wife. I really was expecting more of a battle, but turns out no.
Excellent. What is the best advice you ever received?
Don't do it.
Don't do it.
Literally the best. I think I love Seattle. I love the Northwest. But we have this tendency to be very positive. That's a wonderful idea.
Yeah.
Those are wonderful products. When in reality, that's maybe not what they're thinking. And it's the negative feedback, the critical feedback, that is always the best feedback, because it makes you as an entrepreneur, you as a person who wants to do something new and different, really think about it.
Exactly.
We can all get into our heads like, this is the best thing since sliced bread. This is better than the moonshot for Apollo, right? But in reality, it may not be. And it's that critical feedback that whether we follow their advice or don't, allows us as individuals to become better and more focused on what we're trying to do and to understand the risks. And Devlin McGill at the Leary Traveler and the Great Nabob, a few bars that he owns, he said to me flat out, don't do it. Don't do it. You don't know what you're doing. It's too hard. It's too brutal. I'm in this business. It's not the smart play.
Yeah.
And it was that feedback that made me really think about how I was approaching it, what I was planning to do. I totally ignored him in that I still did it. But that critical feedback...
It took you a step back,
right,
made you realize what you're doing, actually think about it, and
right,
execute on it.
And that critical feedback is so important. And every time I see him, I tell him thank you.
Excellent. Can you share one personal habit that contributes to your success?
Yeah, I would honestly say having children, because it puts the fear of God into you that if this thing fails, we have no other fallback.
Yeah.
And wanting them, wanting to provide a living for them, and the 3 squares and a roof and shelter. But having that goes back to that focus, right? Fear is not a bad thing if harnessed correctly. Stress is not a bad thing if used appropriately. And it can be a very liberating thing, because you're like, look, I have my blinders on.
Mm-hmm.
I have it as an individual. I have 2 things in my life. I have my family and I have the distillery and the 2-bar brand, right? Because I'm about the 2-bar brand. The process, the quality, the product, everything is around. I'm doing it because of legacy and heritage. And I don't ski anymore. I don't sail anymore. I don't have
all
hobbies.
the hobbies went away.
There's no hobbies for me, right? And I've never been happier, right? So people go, oh yeah, when you take me time? I'm like, every day is me time because I get to make whiskey, So that fear and that stress can be if focused, can be awesome.
Excellent. Can you share one internet resource like Evernote that you can share with our listeners, and something that you can use at the distillery or something to communicate with other employees, even personal?
Yeah, I think I would honestly say systems like Dropbox or Google Docs.
Google Docs, yep.
We as a team use those on an hourly basis. For one, tracking our production, for tracking and getting ready for the monthly and quarterly reports that we do to the city, state, and federal government. Using tools like that make the whole system and the process easier, and allow for better and faster communications as a team. Like Maddie, my head distiller, she's amazing, but she and I don't always have a chance to talk on a daily basis. So having these tools allow us to communicate and understand what's happening and what needs to happen.
Excellent. What is one book that you can recommend to Distillery Nation and why?
So I would say Bourbon Curious by Fred Minnick is great. Of course, it has to do with whiskey. I think that this is an industry like every other industry that you can never assume that you know everything, and you always have to be learning. Whether it's from a production perspective, a quality perspective, competitive perspective, market perspective, like what's happening in China could affect me as a business, right? And so you can't stop learning and you can't stop reading. But yeah, I'd say that was a great one that I've been reading recently, which has a lot of great feedback in terms of the bourbon market, what's out there, what people are liking, and flavor profiles.
Very nice. We'll link that in the show notes as well. So, Nathan, before we close out, can you tell us one last piece of parting guidance and the best way to connect with you and the distillery?
Yeah, definitely. So Two Bar Spirits is located in Seattle's Soto neighborhood, right on 4th Avenue South, just south of Lander Street. We have wonderful free parking, which is a novelty. We're also on the web, twobarspirits.com, and that's number 2 BAR. Facebook is 2 Bar Spirits, and Twitter is 2 Bar.
Excellent.
Parting advice, I would say, is support local. I think there's so many great products coming out of local distilleries like we've had with breweries and wineries, and that the biggest challenge that local distilleries face is not competition, it is awareness, right? How do you get people to know about what you're doing and why? Like I tell people, oh, what's your founding story? And that's, the 2 Bar Ranch and the family and that history. But I actually say it's my reason why, right? It's not my story, it's my reason for doing what I do. And sharing that with people and getting that awareness for me and for other distillers is the main battle. So how do you ensure that people hear about you? How do you ensure that people talk about you? That is one of the most important things you need to do.
Excellent. Well, appreciate it. Thank you for all the advice, and we'll talk soon again.
Well, my pleasure, and I'm just so excited for the launch of your new initiative.
I appreciate it.
That's going to be very exciting.
Thank you, Nathan. Cheers.
Hey, Distillery Nation. If you like what you heard today, please visit distillerynation.com to view all of today's show notes, plus any of the previous ones. Also, don't forget to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter @Greek Distillery. Thank you for listening and have a great day.